Welcome. Thanks for joining me. I'm Christopher Brown, osteopathic physician, and this is healing versus problem solving. Can you tell the difference between healing and problem solving? If you're like most of us, you've never considered this topic before. We don't learn about it in school, and we don't hear about it in the news or in scientific reports. There's no pamphlet on this subject in the waiting room at your doctor's office, next to a Wired magazine. The distinction between healing and problem solving has actually become a type of secret knowledge. Hardly anyone knows about it or talks about it today, even in health communities and alternative medicine communities. And yet, it holds the key elements for all the healing we will ever do. For us, we want to know what this knowledge is. We want to be able to separate healing from problem solving too. We want to know how to heal for ourselves. When we can hold healing in one hand and problem solving in the other, we can choose which one we want to use. And then we can use them with efficiency and power. It's like holding the thunderbolt in one hand and the trident in the other. In our own lives, when we get sick or injured, instead of doing what most of us do by calling our doctor or getting an IV cocktail or trying some biohacking advice off the internet, what we really need to do first is answer this simple question for ourselves. Can I tell the difference between healing and problem solving? When we can successfully see the difference between these paths and see these ancient methods for what they are, then we can increase our health by orders of magnitude. Many years ago, I had a patient who taught me about the difference between healing and problem solving. This young man walked into my office one day holding two well-organized folders full of papers. They were huge folders, and he put them down in front of me with a look of pride and also of despair. I'll never forget this guy. They were his medical records. This man had a mysterious digestive problem, and he had spent years trying to get to the bottom of it. He went to many top specialists all over the city. He underwent countless diagnostic procedures, some of them multiple times. He tried all manner of therapies, procedures, and pharmaceutical remedies. This guy had dedicated years of his life trying to solve his health problem and had exhausted every possibility he could think of. And after all that, he wasn't any better. So he ended up in my office asking for help. I agreed to see what I could do. So when it came time to do his structural evaluation, I had him lie down on the treatment table. And like I do with most patients, I started by touching his feet so I could get an overall sense of how his body was doing. When my hands touched his feet, though, what I felt almost knocked me to the ground. This man had no motion in his body. All those natural physiologic motions that move through living beings, like blood and lymph circulation, and all the vibratory movements and electrical potency that belong in living body tissues, were almost totally absent. It felt like I was touching a dead person. To this day, he's the unhealthiest body I have ever put my hands on. And I've treated many patients in the ICU and many patients on life support. I couldn't believe he was even walking around and talking. He was a real life zombie. What had happened here? This patient stuck with me because he was a diligent problem solver. One of the most diligent I had seen. He was the perfect patient. He followed all his doctor's orders precisely for years. And yet, he was the unhealthiest body that I could imagine, other than being an outright cadaver. It was so clear in this case that the pathway of medical problem solving is its own affair, and had no bearing on the health of his body. It had no bearing on the ability of that body to move vitality through it and express health. The road of problem solving is a completely different road to that of healing. The two roads have different smells, different looks, different sounds, and different landscapes. This patient could have continued problem solving for the next 30 years, and he would not have dipped his foot into the river of health even once. So what happened to this guy? This man got on the wrong train, so to speak, at the train station. When he got sick, he boarded the train of problem solving without even knowing why or where he was going. And he ended up being dropped off in the middle of the desert with a wrinkled jacket and his suitcases falling open. Problem solving is a specific approach to the body that has specific indications. It's a specialized tool, like a wrench. It is not for all occasions and all circumstances. So it's time we understand what this process is that we have become so infatuated with in our society. If we look back into the depths of history, we can see that problem solving was used by humans for thousands of years. Some of our ancient heroes were great problem solvers, like Daedalus, father of Icarus, in Greek mythology. And some of our current heroes are problem solvers too, like Albert Einstein and Sherlock Holmes. Problem solving can be a sophisticated method for approaching life that is useful in engineering, science, and crime solving. It's also useful when fixing appliances. If the toilet breaks down in your house, for example, you too will instantly become a problem solver. But in our society, we've made a peculiar decision. We've decided that problem solving specifically is the best way to understand our bodies and the phenomena of illness and injury. This is the fact we want to investigate today. Is it appropriate to have the same approach to our bodies that we would have to a crime scene or a broken toilet? It's not hard to see why we use problem solving. When we get sick or injured, we don't like it. It's painful. It's uncomfortable. We want these experiences to stop. We feel broken. When we get sick or injured, it feels like we can't live the life we want to live because we feel so miserable. We don't want the sore throat or the pain or the fatigue or the nausea, for example. We'd rather play golf. We'd rather go hiking and do what we love to do. So we believe that these illnesses and injuries are problems or obstacles that block us from living how we want. Naturally then, we try to remove the problems. We try to remove the illness or injury so we can get back to our lives. This is called problem solving. If you want to see what problem solving looks like in real time, all you have to do is take a moment to look around you. You will quickly notice that we all behave the same way. When we get sick or injured in our society, we all become problem solvers. We try to figure out what went wrong and then fix it. It doesn't matter what we have. Lower back pain, stuffy nose, cancer, liver problems. Whatever it is, we try to find out what is messing up our life, and then we try to make it all go away. If you've ever played the board game Clue, you will know what problem solving is all about. In the game Clue, a crime is committed. Then the players spend the rest of the game figuring out who committed the crime. Was it Professor Plum with the candlestick in the ballroom? Or who was it? When we get sick or injured in real life, we do the same thing. We behave as if a crime was committed on our body, and we spend our efforts trying to figure out who did it. It's a who done it. Was it a bacteria? Was it a virus? Was it a so-called autoimmune disease or inflammation? Was it a herniated disc or a genetic mutation? We want to know who the perpetrator is so we can find them and bring them to justice. Maybe after all it was Colonel Mustard with the mitochondrial dysfunction in the billiard room who caused all our health problems. Once we think we discover the criminal, so to speak, or what we think is the cause of our suffering, then we try to make it stop. And there are so many ways we do this. In fact, every healthcare institution in our society is designed to help us make problems stop. Modern medicine, longevity medicine, biotech, biohacking, and genetic testing are all problem-solving institutions, as are most of integrative medicine and alternative medicine. There are so many treatments and approaches we use, from drugs to supplements to devices and remedies of so many kinds. There's nothing wrong with this whodunit approach, and there's nothing wrong with problem solving as a methodology. Nothing at all. I use it. We all use it. But today we're going to ask a provocative question. Is problem solving missing something? In other words, is there another possibility available to us when we get sick or injured other than problem solving? Not too long ago, a man came into my office who had figured this out. He'd figured out another way to approach disease. He told me that many years ago he recovered from cancer. I was interested in hearing more, so I asked him to tell me the story about how he did it. What he told me was fascinating. In his story, he barely mentioned his cancer once. He didn't tell me about some amazing doctor he found, and he didn't tell me about some special treatment he underwent. Instead, he told me about something I didn't expect. He told me how much he loved his wife. Then he told me how he had learned how to use his thoughts. He said he noticed that much of his thinking was towards doubt and negativity. So he learned how to use his thoughts to bring out the best in himself instead. And then he told me how he started to perceive what foods were healthy for him and how to avoid foods that made him sick. His story went on like this. He said he basically started a new life. And in this new life, much of the disease vanished, along with his cancer. What was this guy up to? Was he making all this up? How was he able to overcome disease without focusing on disease? If you remember, the first patient we talked about at the beginning was the problem solver. He was focused on his problems and what doctors could tell him about a disease state he thought he had. And unfortunately for him, it was much wasted effort. But this former cancer patient here had a totally different approach. He wasn't focused on his disease state. In fact, he disregarded much of what his doctors told him. Instead, he began to sense within himself that there was a power there of some kind that he could tap into to change his body and fill his life and his body with health. This man was not involved with problem solving. He was involved with healing. So what does healing mean exactly? Healing means to have an experience of vitality. That is what it means. It refers to the process by which more and more vitality comes into our lives, where vitality is that underlying current or life force that runs through our bodies and through all of nature. This former cancer patient was in a healing process because he started to feel that quality of vitality in his life. He felt it in his relationship with his wife and in his thoughts and in his food. And when vitality grows in our lives, it washes away disease without effort. It turns problems into sawdust. So many of us have confusion about this point. We get tripped up when we try to heal our bodies, and it's easy to see why. We tend to believe that healing is something that happens to us after problem solving. We tend to believe that if we can fix our problems first, only then vitality and health will be waiting for us, like a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. This is why we try so hard to get a diagnosis and a treatment from experts. But vitality is actually not on the other side of a diagnosis and a treatment. And healthcare experts typically don't know anything about it. Vitality is not dependent on anything a doctor or an alternative medicine practitioner can tell you or do for you. It comes to you only when you have a direct experience of it in your own life, for yourself. In healing, we have an experience of vitality first, then problems dissolve and go away, not the other way around. To get more information about this and see how healing works, we don't have to look far. Examples of it are all around, in our everyday lives, and also in our society's most famous myths and stories. For example, if you grew up as a kid in the 80s like I did, you'd know the movie E.T., the extraterrestrial, about a little alien who gets stuck on Earth. It's considered one of the most influential films of all time. If you can remember the movie, there's a scene where E.T. and the little boy Elliot are hiding from the mom in the closet. Elliot cuts his finger on a saw blade and says, "Ow!" He looks at his finger and it's covered in blood. The alien E.T. watches this and immediately reaches out his long finger to touch the boy's wound. But something unusual happens to the tip of E.T.'s long finger. It starts to glow. It glows like a light bulb. The tip of E.T.'s glowing finger touches Elliot's finger, and instantly the hurt finger is cured with no wound or blood to be found. What is this scene all about? Remember the formula for healing. It's on full display right here. In healing, there is direct contact made with vitality. E.T.'s glowing light bulb finger represents a life force of some kind. It represents a potent source of vitality. Elliot then has to touch it. He makes direct contact with it and has an experience of it. When this happens, his body changes instantly and his wound is gone. Notice there was no problem solving going on here. When E.T. saw Elliot get hurt, he didn't pull out the wet wipes or the alcohol pads. He didn't put on an N95 mask and give him a tetanus booster. E.T. didn't problem solve. He turned his finger into a light bulb. He activated a healing process using vital forces. Once you see the formula, you can find it everywhere. So many stories of healing look like this. They involve someone making direct contact with a source of high vitality. For example, there are many such stories in the New Testament of the Bible involving Jesus. In one famous case, there was a woman who had a bleeding disorder for 12 years. The Bible says she went to many physicians, but only got worse and used up all her money. So when Jesus came into her town, she felt if she could just touch him or touch some part of him, she'd be healed. She made her way through the crowd surrounding Jesus and reached out her hand and was able to touch his robes. Listen to how this is described in the Bible. Quote, "When she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak because she thought, if I just touch his clothes, I will be healed. Immediately her bleeding stopped and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. At once Jesus realized that power had gone out from him. He turned around in the crowd and asked, 'Who touched my clothes?' Close quote. Again, here's the healing pattern. Jesus represents the source of vitality. When the sick woman has a direct experience of this high vitality source, her body changes instantly. The Bible even says specifically that when she touches the robes, quote, power goes out from Jesus, indicating that there's a movement of vitality spontaneously, automatically. And the woman, quote, felt it in her body. What we're being shown in our most popular stories are not fanciful hallucinations. We're being shown a specific mechanism of healing. It's a sequence of events that actually refers to what happens in the real world and in our real lives. We increase vitality in our lives first, then problems go away, not the other way around. That's what healing means. Now, we can all look at these stories and perhaps agree that they're showing us healing events. But when we finish the movie or close the book, we tend to forget about them and go right back to problem solving. It's truly a difficult thing for us in our society to get this straight. We tend to leave healing for the world of children's stories and religious mythology, and don't see how it applies to our actual everyday lives. We're much more comfortable with problem solving. But I hope everyone can start to see the point. We have to muster up the courage to challenge this belief system that we've all fallen into, that says that problem solving is the only way to increase health. To hold to this belief system is entirely illogical. Problem solving doesn't lead to increased health. It never has, and it never will. It was not meant for this purpose. And yet, we all keep going to this same well and drinking the water over and over again. Problem solving is a method that leads to problem solving. It has limited uses with regard to the body, but important uses. For example, in emergency situations, we want to use problem solving. Or if we want to get certain diagnostic information, problem solving techniques are useful. But why would someone think that problem solving leads to health? Whoever said that? Did a wise man say that once? Or was it written in some ancient book? If so, I've never heard of it or read it. Medicine, scientific research, diagnostics, therapies, drugs, and remedies are all on the level of problem solving. These approaches are not related to human health. They have other value that we're grateful for. But human health requires the direct perception of vitality. So when you hear someone say that they can't get over their disease and that they've been to countless doctors and, quote, tried everything, you can be sure that they've been involved in problem solving and haven't started a healing process yet. Healing is not something you try, like you would try a therapy. It is not a therapy. Healing means we feel something. It means we feel the part of us that is the current of life force, moving through all of nature. When Jesus healed that lady, as described in the Bible, he didn't become her functional medicine doctor. He didn't tell her to juice fast. He didn't propose to her some non-FDA approved injectable therapy from Switzerland that all the pro athletes are getting. He didn't tell her about a genetic mutation she has, or how there's a new technology coming out that will allow him to personalize medications for her according to her DNA. There was none of this problem-solving behavior. All he had to do was make contact with her, and vitality moved. And when vitality moved, problems vanished. The funny thing is, we already know this on some level. We know that healing is its own phenomenon and is not related to problem solving. For example, many people have told me that the ocean water in Hawaii is healing for them. It seems like everyone says this. I recently visited Hawaii myself, and now I can say I agree with them. Those waters I felt on the Big Island have strong healing properties. They're incredible. So what do people mean when they say that the ocean water in Hawaii is healing? Do they mean that the ocean water is able to diagnose them with Lyme disease? Or instead, do they mean that those waters have some quality of aliveness and some quality of vibrancy and vitality that they can feel when the water touches them? We know this. We know what healing is, and so many people have known about this. Emily Dickinson knew about it. Dickinson is one of America's most revered and famous poets and a strong voice in the Western canon. She lived back in the 1800s. In one of her poems, she helps us see the difference between healing and problem solving. She writes, quote, "Surgeons must be very careful when they take the knife. Underneath their fine incisions stirs the culprit, life." Close quote. It can't be put any better than this. The surgeon's knife and the fine incisions are what we do when we problem solve. We are all like this surgeon in the poem. We look and poke around and dissect and cut things with equipment, trying to fix the problems we have. But what are we missing? There's something else stirring around in there. Something stirring around in our bodies and all over nature. What is that? Knives and microscopes, tests and devices don't help us know it. What is there is life, or what we can call vitality. Healing means we make contact with that. It means we put down the knife and open our hand and reach out to touch it, to have an experience of it in stillness where we can feel it. Healing and problem solving are both important methods that we can use to improve our lives. But let's no longer waste our time and effort pursuing a path that leads to a place we don't want to go. If indeed we're looking to find health, then the mechanism is there for us to use any time and any place. It is called healing, and it means to find the true culprit, life.